Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 1291. I said yesterday I graduated in 1290 from college. That would make me very old. It was 1990. Hello, it's Mike Matthews broadcasting from Café Anyway, located somewhere in Podcastro Valley, Mont. And today, Madame Rootabega, Valentino, Bison Bentley PLUS, a wonderful segment. It is called News Random.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
I had a wonderful conversation just now, as a matter of fact, with Marco about crepes.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
There's a place near where we work in the town of Fremont, and this is what this crepe place has got. A bunch of crepes with a bunch of stuff, different fillings, and you can get, let's see, Peter Schilling, he sings the song Earth Below Us.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
No, I think these fillings have, what was there in there? Bacon, seafood, and
Mike's
meat,
Daily
or vegetables.
Podcast.
Just about everything can be put in these crepes.
Yeah.
It's wonderful crepes! Well, I didn't want to talk about crepes today, but I guess I just did. I want to talk about Starbucks and how I'm giving up Starbucks for Lent. No, I'm not giving up Starbucks for Lent. I'm giving them up for all kinds of reasons, like for the fact that I had over 100 points, or stars, or whatever they call their stupid point system, and they're now gone. My points are now gone. Yeah, no reason at all. Just gone. Anyway. Café Anyway. I'm done with it. You know what? They did this thing to me before. I had a birthday. So when you get to a point where they'll give you a free coffee for your birthday or a free drink of whatever you want, which you can load up and, you know, rig the system to make your coffee the most delicious coffee drink of all time with all these little things you can add to it. They give you like 3 days to use it, and it's gone. They have weird... I don't like the way Starbucks has turned into this weird, just awful rules. I don't like rules. I'm kind of with the whole Trump anti-regulation thing in some ways. Except for when it hurts the environment or people. Oh, look, I just walked in. Hello, Michael Master, it's Madame Rootabega, and I own the Café Anyway. Anyway. And I have all these rules. Do you see all these signs on the bars? Yeah, you just put these up. All these weird, stupid signs like no refills. Don't wipe your feet on the bear rug. I didn't know we had a bear rug. Yes, Michael Master. It's right over there. Oh, that's a big bear. It says, don't look at Madame Rootabega directly. Oops, I just did it. Ow, sorry. Don't ever look at me again. Ooh. I don't like places with a bunch of rules. Okay, there's this new park in Pleasanton. And it is so beautiful because there are no signs. Everywhere you go in the Bay Area, I know where that song Signs Everywhere a Sign came from the 5-man electrical band, and later covered by Tesla, where they did an acoustic version. Look who else just walked in. It's because of the stupid signs everywhere. In the Bay Area, there are ridiculous signs. Pick up after your dog. Don't dance. Well, I haven't seen that one. Don't do this. No. And and they're written in this short, sort of authoritarian, dictatorship, sort of barking at you sort of way. Dictators. I hate it. And helicopter parents. Oh. Okay, that's a different topic. But I was listening to a wonderful podcast yesterday from the Minnesota Public Radio, NPR. I am not a huge fan of Minnesota Public Radio as a rule. Oh, I hate rules. Garrison Keillor owns it, and they have a show called Marketplace I'm not a fan of. I kind of like Prairie Home Companion, but there's this show, NPR, with, and I forgot her name. I'm going to try and look it up on my phone as I'm talking to you, do two things at the same time. First, I have to enter the code into my phone, which is bleep, 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 bloop, bloop. And then it and it'll take forever to open because I got to go into my Google Play, which if you have a Samsung, that's what you use to listen to podcasts. That's what I do anyway. NPR. Carrie Miller! Thank you. Carrie Miller talked to this... Oh, what was... Ah! Sorry, I'm having problems with my phone. Oh, okay. Here it is. It is with Ruth Whitman. Ruth Whitman. She wrote this book called America the Anxious. And they took calls because it's a podcast made out of a radio show. So they're able to take calls. By the way, I'm able to take calls. You can call me now. 336-MM Daily. And the callers that called up, one of them, first off, this was one of the best podcasts I've heard in a long time. And this woman called in about happiness and about being a parent and about how difficult it is to be happy as a parent because you're always worried about everything, and about being a helicopter parent. And she said, I refuse to be a helicopter parent. I let my kid do things within reason, strike out independently on his or her own. And she said, the teachers are always telling me how wonderful my son is. That's right, she had a son. And she said that helicopter parents' kids that she's run into, the kids of helicopter parents, are awful. They're unruly. They don't know rules. Rules!
And here's today's podcast picture.
Rules everywhere, rules. Go! Maybe you shouldn't be the type of parent that's like a helicopter parent. Maybe she'd be more like a Homer. Go! Where all kinds of horrible, frightening things happen to your children and somehow they survive because they're a cartoon. The podcast picture today is not a cartoon. It is of me and my dog, Basil the Boxer. We were sitting, this was Friday, almost a week ago, after a horrible situation where Basil was not feeling well. He was having an issue with his joints. It was hard for him to walk his front two legs. He was having a hard time walking on Thursday. And then Friday, he was so much better. And I met with a fellow dog friend, owner friend. I didn't meet with a dog friend. This friend was not a dog. A friend was an owner of a dog. Owner of a lonely dog. Dun dun. Hey, look up on YouTube Trevor Horn, who produced that song by Yes. A song written by Trevor Rabin. A lot of Trevors in this story. And Trevor Horn tells this fantastic story about how that song was written, Owner of a Lonely Heart, that you've heard a gazillion times. I'm not going to tell it now. Remind me later. Or watch the YouTube. Look up Trevor Horn. It is so funny. The song went through so many changes and rewrites. And the drums I did not know aren't real on that song. It's you're actually hearing like a drum machine until there's some parts that they added drums to. Anyway. Café Anyway. Café there.
Anyway.
There we go.
Anyway.
What happened was we were talking about the owner of a... Oh, yeah. So Leilani is her name. She met with me, and she took this picture of me and Basil the Boxer. And she was... Somehow Basil all of a sudden seemed more happy when he saw Leilani. And from then on, he's been improving, and he's been doing really well. And yesterday, he was almost back to his original self. So that's good. I think a lot of sleep helped him. And I got him a sweater. And I'm giving him a little glucosamine to help with his joints. He's 8. So, some people say boxers that age is too old. Not too old. But that's old for a boxer. But I've met people whose boxers got up to 15. So I've gone on a dog tangent. I shall get to the news story and tell you about what interesting news, random things happened today. Check out the podcast and the past podcast pictures at mikesdailypodcast.com. There's also a link to Amazon. If you're going to buy anything on Amazon, go through that at mikesdailypodcast.com. That helps us out. There's also a link to PayPal. You can help us out that way. And there are all the past podcast pictures and the interesting other things, past interviews I've done, all at mikesdailypodcast.com. Now, news random.
News random. Awesome.
Burger Master.
Crepes are really delicious. Rules suck. But whatever. We have to have rules for some things. Trump. Oh, yes, I've changed the topic. By the way, one of the podcasts I love to listen to is To the Point, and there was a woman on there who was trying to explain what was she trying to talk about? How Trump is, they were talking about the speech and about some of what Trump has said he would do as compared to what, oh, by the way, Trump, during his speech, mentioned NATO. I have the transcript. I don't actually have the sound clip, but he says, we strongly support NATO, an alliance forged through the bond of 2 world wars that dethroned fascism and a Cold War and defeated communism. Oh, wait a minute. Now that I've read the transcript, I thought for a second he said, we strongly support NATO that was there for 2 world wars, which of course it wasn't. It was created after the Second World War in 1949. So he said an alliance forged through the bonds of 2 world wars that dethroned. So that's different than what I thought. And a Cold War and defeated communism. He had to talk about that because of all the stuff he said about NATO. Well, former President George W. Bush on Wednesday warned against an isolationist tendency in the U.S. and that he called dangerous to national security at a time when the current president has faced questions about his commitment to the country's international partnerships. This, according to USA Today. The 43rd president was speaking at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California, to promote his new book, Portraits of Courage, a volume of his paintings of military veterans. Yes, he's our painting president. Bush's remarks come at a time when Europeans have been skittish that President Donald Trump may promote isolationist policies. Last month, Vice President Pence reassured allies in Europe about the U.S. commitment to NATO and the country's willingness to maintain its ties around the globe. Bush, who is now 70, he is still, Trump is 70, right? Or is he a little bit older? Said it was not his intent to criticize his successors at the White House, and he is optimistic about the future. Quote, I don't want to make the president's job worse. But he also alluded to the Iraq War and warned that there is a lesson. Quote, when the United States decided not to take the lead and withdraw, an apparent critique of former President Barack Obama. Vacuums can be created when U.S. presence recedes, and that vacuum is generally filled with people who don't share the ideology, the same sense of human rights and human dignity and freedom that we do. Trump's speech, however, back to that, according to Nielsen data, 47.7 million people tuned in to watch him speak. Far fewer than the number of people who watched the first addresses to Congress from former presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Clinton dwarfed Trump's roughly 48 million viewers with 66.9 million. Trump had 47.7 million. When he first addressed the Congress for the first time, as Trump did last night, in 1993 is when Clinton did that. A lot of you weren't alive yet. And more than 52 million people watched Obama's speech in 2009. Trump did do dramatically better, though, than Bush, the one I was just talking about, whose 2001 speech had only about 39.8 million viewers. Seriously, that dude could put you to sleep. I was not a fan of the speeches of George W. Bush, but at least he didn't do upspeak. And in the podcast I alluded to earlier, To the Point, that was critiquing Trump's speech, this woman was talking, and she did a lot of upspeak, at the end of every word. Let's listen to that now. Let's go to the tape.
Right. So earlier this week, Trump, through his Office of Management and Budget, indicated that he was interested in spending $54 billion more in defense and then having roughly equivalent cuts on the non-defense discretionary side of the budget.
Now, that's just funny. As we go outside of Café Anyway, we're bringing Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcaster Valley. The upspeak, I don't know what she's saying because I'm just listening to the up words. Upspeak got really big 10 years ago. I remember watching some home improvement show that my ex-wife used to make me watch, and there was an Australian guy who kept doing the upspeak. And he said, you need to take everything out. You need to take it out and throw it out inside. You can't go and put everything back into your garage. He talked like that. And I was like, shut up with the upspeak. And then it got really big about 5 years ago. I don't hear it so much anymore except for that lady who just did that. She's very smart, but I don't like to upspeak. Next show, it's going to be Chely Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, and John Deere, the engineer. Rules! So many rules. Break a rule today. But don't break the law. That's wrong. Wrong. Come on, please. Just for me?
Wrong.
Thank you.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!